Hi, welcome back. So, what we're going to be looking at now is just a couple of other studies that look at the benefits of physical activity, specifically mindful movement, on well being. And so, I apologize that these are a little bit fuzzy. You're welcome to reference the slides on the actual printout PDF as well. But what this one's looking at is specifically the benefits of Tai Chi on blood pressure, lipid profile, and anxiety status. So, what I want to look at first is just our results. So, as you can see, they have here a baseline group as well as a 12-week group. 12 weeks is following intervention. So, they had a control group that they compared with, as well as this group that experienced a Tai Chi intervention for 12 weeks. And a few things that I want to highlight is first, you can see that after 12 weeks for our Tai Chi group, systolic blood pressure went down significantly, with significance being P less than 0.001. So then you can also see that diastolic blood pressure for our Tai Chi group went down significantly, P at 0.05. And then you can see that lipid profile, the actual total cholesterol level, went down, as well as our HDL going up, which is considered a positive thing. HDL is our good cholesterol. It's what we use to actually clear the plaque within our arteries. And HDL going up is actually a pretty difficult thing to do. And so being able to see that within a 12-week period is pretty significant for these benefits that we saw. So going back to this study, they saw that within this population, which is again just 76 individuals with high to normal blood pressure, nothing above stage 1 hypertension, looking at this intervention and seeing how effective it was, and being able to understand that in just 12 weeks, a benefit was seen. And so I think this is a pretty significant study in the sense that it's just a start, it's just 76 individuals, but actual physiological responses were measured. And I think that's a really great place to start when I start considering what research needs to be done in the future as well. The next study I want to look at is just a loving kindness article. It's talking about the kind of benefits of loving kindness and compassion meditation. And again, I apologize, the citing is off, but you can see it here. Loving kindness meditation is essentially a meditation where we begin by saying kind of to ourselves this idea of self-love, and then we may extend that to say either to people that we know, people we don't know, people that maybe have hurt or wronged us in some way. And this quote here is kind of where we end things. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be safe. May all beings live with ease. And of course, the end phrases of all of these may change over time or over different meditations. And that's just kind of the main idea, is that we grow into having this kind of universal compassion for individuals. And what Hoffman found was that although this is a preliminary study, they were able to see both physical, psychological, and kind of that emotional affect, which is still psychological, benefits experienced for individuals that practice loving kindness meditation. And so the suggestion from this article is that we not necessarily use it as a sole practice for health measures only, but understanding that this could actually be a complementary practice to all different practices that are available if we're looking to see changes in actual physiological health, as well as these psychological changes in things like depression and social anxiety, marital conflict, anger, any of those things that may be affecting our well-being. Loving kindness has been shown to benefit or change that impact. So next what I want to look at is just an additional study, and this is again focused on my research specifically with the treatment of refugees and survivors of torture. But what this study essentially did was it looked at different research that has been done and started to understand what we know about complementary medicine, such as things like meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, those sorts of practices, and understanding what we understand with research, quality research, about how that affects well being. So, looking at this table, as you can see, there are studies that have looked at a few things: dance and movement, spirituality, but very little has been done within the refugee population to understand how pranayama, for example, yogic breathing, massage, yoga, just different poses within yoga. Tai Chi is very limited, but the kind of qualitative research done has shown benefits, but we just currently don't have a lot of research to speak to the benefits within this population. And my kind of push for this is that if we can understand this population, who is maybe at the most severe end of experiencing negative psychological effects, I think that we can really understand how this could impact anyone. The percentage of individuals that experience domestic violence is unfortunately quite high. There's a trend right now of information coming out about individuals that have experienced, unfortunately, sexual harassment. That's quite high. And that could be causing some of these traumatic effects that individuals are experiencing. And practices like yoga, Tai Chi, other mindful movement practices, meditation could be a way to help alleviate some of the negative symptoms associated with that. So a few things I really just want to consider from this article are: first, that there's a physiological and a psychological benefit, but that any sensations that we experience may be a trigger. A change in heart rate, for example, may be a trigger for kind of recurring thoughts or impacts of trauma. Those are things that need to be considered and understood to be able to avoid negative impacts of these practices. There's a huge void in the research, and that's something that I hope to be a part of in the future. The exercise is low impact, such as Tai Chi, but research has shown that even those low impact activities for individuals that maybe can't engage in higher physical activities, higher intensity physical activities, benefits are still being seen. And so that's a big reason why this may be a useful practice, not only for the mind, but as well as the body. And then this idea of dual diagnosis, where we diagnose kind of Western medicine practices, which we know have a positive effect on health, but we give some familiarity using these Eastern practices or maybe more traditional practices from refugees' home countries, so that we can start to understand how these things work together instead of conflict with each other and cause even more discomfort between an individual. The last research I want to look at is just a research article by Diner and colleagues. And Diner's one of the kind of main kind of well-being researchers in the field. And I just wanted to highlight a few things for the sake of time. So first, in this consideration of if, why, and when should we be studying subjective well-being and how that could influence health, there are some mediators and moderators that need to be considered. Again, this goes back to that mediator-moderator conversation that we had in the previous study. So some mediators that are mentioned are the cardiovascular system, the immune system, the endocrine system, looking at telomeres or just focusing on how the impact of the kind of aging process of all of our cells influences well-being. Wound healing, I apologize, that should say wound healing. And then also just health behavior change, which as we know could affect all of those other systems if healthy behaviors were engaged in. Some other moderators that need to be considered are population being sampled and the geographical region that they come from. This again applies to my research, considering the fact that refugees come from kind of 2 or 3 geographical regions by the time I'm actually seeing them. The type of subjective well-being, specifically within the positive psychology field, understanding that there's this importance of positive well-being indicators as well as some of those negative well-being indicators, specific health outcomes, and study characteristics. So just understanding the importance of all of these different things. And the article highlights different reasons. We may go into different considerations for that. Next, I just want to look at some kind of main considerations for needed research in the field. So as you can see, they list 11. A few that are specifically important to me are understanding both the positive and the negative effect or affect within subjective well-being, and also what those thresholds are, and understanding whether intensity or this idea of the hedonic treadmill actually applies. Understanding time and some of the longitudinal effects of well-being. Moving, you can see number 8, moving beyond just a one-time self-report. That ties into that longitudinal effect as well. And then also understanding cultural differences. Those are a few pieces that really matter to me. And so as I went through my own experience, I tried to define those things for myself so that as I ask individuals to maybe define things for themselves, I could know a bit more about what that experience means. So to kind of tie up, I just want to tie up with just some things that were my major learnings. So this is my deep exploration piece. So first, what I really feel like I found valuable from this experience, I have 3 major things that I want to share. So first, I feel like this was an activity to define myself a little bit more. I thought of my values, I thought of my practice, and I really tied my being into my doing. And I think that was a really valuable experience for me. And for me, it empowered me. I started to understand that I was able to have control over my own subjective well-being, but that experiences around me also had an effect, and I needed to consider where I wanted to place myself in that context. And that was a really valuable learning for me. The second learning was just tips and tricks. This is something that I shared with my fellow students. They shared with me, I shared with them. But also just kind of throughout my own process, understanding what was the best way for me to do things. And one part of this is that it was difficult for me to have kind of my gratitudes and my quality time constantly on my mind without it feeling like a burden. And so a few things that I did to make that possible was I started to set reminders, and I started to kind of build this infrastructure into my day where I had a notepad with me, or I had things with me to help me as ideas came up, instead of constantly feeling like I was lacking in some area. So that was really something that helped me, was starting to just kind of find my own personal tips and tricks and see how that evolved over time. The last piece I want to talk about is just this importance of sharing my story. I've never really considered sharing my own well-being with other individuals, and this project, as well as kind of the practice throughout the semester, really helped me see the importance of sitting down, understanding where I'm at, but also being willing to share that with others so that I had that kind of collective experience. And this ties for me back to the beginning virtues that we discussed of that humanity piece, where I understand myself as a human, but sharing it helps me understand humanity as a whole. And I thought that was a really beautiful way for me to kind of tie in my thoughts for this semester. So those are my 3 major learnings, but of course, I have some ideas for my future travel plans. So one thing that really stood out to me was our goal setting piece, where we tied in a value specifically to our goal. So because I value the mind-body relationship, because I value perseverance, because I value gratitude, whatever that is, I really want to make this goal setting piece a part of my daily practice. And this, for me, is just a way for me to say, is what I'm doing part of not only where I want to be tomorrow, but who I want to be tomorrow. And I think that that's been something that I think I can take to other groups as well. Of course, I want to be a goal digger, just see if I can kind of dive into that a little bit more. And for me, I just wanted to get this idea of daily practice. And I love this quote by Rumi where it says, "Submit to your daily practice, keep knocking, look out to see who's there. So for myself, my daily practice will include quality time, acts of service, mindful movement,